My name is Madison Cole. I'm 30. And my family never let me forget I was the average daughter. Not glamorous, not married, not successful. My sister Ava was everything. Beauty, charm, and my parents' pride. When Dad died, I didn't expect much, but I didn't expect humiliation either. In front of our lawyer, they read his will. To Ava, the family mansion and all assets. To Madison, the lake cabin. Everyone clapped like it was fair. I smiled like I wasn't breaking. But the cabin wasn't just wood and dust. It was hiding something no one ever noticed. And once I opened that floorboard, my family's empire started to crumble. Before we begin this difficult journey, please take a moment to like and subscribe, but only if the story truly resonates with you. I would love to know where you're watching from and what time it is there. My mom said it like a prayer. Ava's everything you're not. Those words played on loop in my head as I stood by my father's casket, the scent of lilies mixing with old perfume and hypocrisy. Everyone wore black, but somehow, my mother's pearls still managed to outshine grief. Across the room, Ava looked like she was posing for a magazine cover with flawless makeup, crocodile tears. People swarmed her like she was the widow instead of the daughter. "She's holding up so well," one of Dad's friends whispered. "Always so strong." Strong. Right. She didn't even live her for the last 2 years. When I tried to thank people for coming, they nodded politely, their eyes sliding past me to where Ava stood. The golden child, the one who never failed. I was the one who stayed, who handled hospital bills, who cleaned out the house when Dad got sick. But in my family, effort never counted, only image did. During the reception, the lawyer, Mr. Blake Turner, cleared his throat. Mr. Cole's estate will be divided per his written instructions. Everyone turned to listen. I sipped my water, pretending not to care. To Ava Cole, he read, the Cole family mansion and all holdings therein. Gasps, applause, hugs all for her. Then he continued. To Madison Cole, my beloved daughter, I leave our lake cabin in Birch County. The room went quiet for a bit, then came the pity smiles. Someone muttered, "At least it's something." My mother didn't even look at me. She just dabbed her eyes like the actress she was. I smiled, small and practiced. The kind you wear when you're bleeding inside. "Thank you," I said, though no one had congratulated me. Afterward, I stood by the window, watching Ava accept condolences like awards. Every touch on her arm, every sympathetic glance was another reminder that I'd lost more than a father today. I'd lost the last illusion that I mattered. Mom came up behind me, voice cold. "Don't look so bitter, Madison. You got what your father thought you could handle." "I handled his care for 2 years," I said quietly. She tilted her head. "Exactly." Then she walked away. I wanted to scream, but instead I laughed under my breath. The sound didn't even feel human. I turned to leave, needing air, needing space. Anything but that room full of ghosts pretending to love us. As I reached for my purse, someone stopped me. Mr. Turner, the lawyer, his eyes cautious. He leaned in close enough that only I could hear him. "You might want to visit that cabin sooner than you think," he murmured. I frowned. Why? He gave a small, knowing smile. "Let's just say, your father was a man who liked to hide things." That was the first time I realized the will wasn't the end of something, but it was the beginning. It looked abandoned, like even the forest had given up on it. 3 hours north of the city, the Birch Lake cabin sat crooked against the gray water, half swallowed by weeds and silence. Dad used to bring us here when we were kids. Back then it smelled like pancakes and campfire smoke. Now it just smelled like rot and old secrets. I pushed open the door, and the hinges screamed like something alive. Dust hung in the air, thick and undisturbed. My shoes left perfect prints on the wooden floor. Every corner felt colder than the last. The power didn't work. The lights flickered once, then died completely. Figures, even the cabin was tired of me. I set down my bag and found the old generator in the shed out back, half covered by a tarp and a family of spiders. One good kick and a curse later, it coughed to life, humming just enough to light a single bulb inside. The living room was frozen in time. Same plaid couch, same chipped coffee table, even Dad's fishing jacket still hanging by the door. I traced my fingers along the dusty frame of a photo. Me and Ava, about 8 and 11. She was smiling. I wasn't. That photo had always been a lie. In the kitchen, I found a letter nailed to the wall, yellowed and cracked. "Maintenance overdue," it said, dated 5 years ago. Figures. I opened the pantry, more out of habit than hunger, and noticed a loose floorboard near the corner. I crouched, tugged at it, and it shifted with a groan. Underneath was a small metal box, or what was left of one. The hinges had rusted, and the lock was fused with grime. My hands trembled as I brushed it clean. The padlock was engraved with 3 faint letters, C 1979. C for coal, or maybe something else. 1979 was the year my parents married. "Dad," I whispered, "what were you hiding here?" I tried to pry it open, but the lock held firm. My phone had no signal, so I couldn't even Google the engraving. Great. Alone, in a dying cabin, holding a mystery that felt like it was breathing beneath my skin. As I stood, something clattered behind me, a glass falling from the counter. I froze. The air shifted. It wasn't the wind. The windows were shut tight. I picked up the nearest thing I could find, a rusty fireplace poker, and stepped toward the door. The generator's low hum suddenly cut out, plunging the room into silence. Then came the sound. Slow, heavy. Footsteps on the porch. 1, 2, 3. They stopped right outside the door. My heart hammered so hard I could feel it in my throat. I swallowed, gripping the poker tighter. "Hello?" My voice barely carried. No answer. Just the creak of wood and the unmistakable sound of a boot shifting closer. Whoever they were, they knew I was here. The man at my door knew my name before I spoke. I froze, still holding the fireplace poker from last night's scare. The figure standing outside wasn't a stranger in the dark. It was a tall man in a gray flannel jacket, his boots caked with mud. His tone was calm, too calm. "You must be Madison," he said, like he'd been expecting me. "Do I know you?" I asked, my voice sharper than I meant it to be. He raised his hand slightly. "Noah Grant, local contractor. Your dad hired me a few months back. Said he wanted the place prepped for something." Something. The word stuck. "Prepped for what?" Noah shrugged, scanning the porch like he was remembering instructions. "Didn't say much. Just told me to make sure the structure could hold weight and to keep it quiet." Hold weight. Not exactly a phrase people use for lake houses. Inside, the air felt heavier with him there, but somehow less lonely. He walked around, tapping beams, studying corners. His movements were careful, respectful. "This cabin's got layers," he murmured. "Your dad added new wiring, reinforced the floor. There's something under here." That word again, under. He crouched near the wall beside the kitchen sink, where some of the boards looked newer. "Mind if I check?" I hesitated, then nodded. He pried off a section of paneling with a screwdriver from his tool belt. Behind it, rolled tight and yellowed with age, was a blueprint. He handed it to me carefully. The paper crackled when I unrolled it. The ink had faded, but the title was still legible. Vault Access, Confidential, an underground extension. A whole other level beneath the cabin. Noah let out a low whistle. "Whatever your dad built, it wasn't just storage." I stared at the lines and symbols, my pulse quickening. Dad wasn't an engineer. He was a developer, a man who built homes, not bunkers. "Why would he keep this hidden?" I asked. "Maybe because he didn't want your family to find it," Noah said simply. The words hung in the air, quiet but dangerous. I folded the blueprint and slipped it into my jacket. My hands trembled, not from fear exactly, but from something close to excitement. For the first time since the funeral, I felt alive, like I was part of a story I didn't understand yet. Then my phone buzzed. Mom. I almost ignored it, but the vibration didn't stop. I swiped to answer. "Madison!" Her voice was sharp enough to cut glass. "Are you at that filthy cabin?" I hesitated. "Yes. You had no right to go there. That property is a liability. Your father wanted it destroyed." Her words slammed into me like a storm. "Then why did he leave it to me?" Silence. Just breathing on the other end. Then click. She hung up. Noah looked at me. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "No, but I think I'm finally starting to understand why." Dad's handwriting shouldn't have still looked wet. I found the letter under the sink, behind a loose pipe wrapped in tape that looked older than me. The envelope was warped and water-stained, like it had been waiting for years just to be noticed. When I touched it, my fingers came away gray from the dust, but the ink inside. It gleamed faintly, like it had been written yesterday. The front read, "To Madison only if she finds it herself." My throat tightened. Dad's looping cursive was unmistakable. I tore it open, half afraid it would crumble. Inside, the paper smelled faintly of coffee and mildew. His voice came to life in my head as I read. If you're reading this, I couldn't finish what I started. Don't tell your mother. Don't trust anyone tied to the house. Project Birch Legacy isn't what it looks like. It was supposed to protect you. I read the lines 3 times, my hands shaking harder with each pass. Protect me from what? He dated it 6 months before his death. The same month, the doctors had said his cancer was finally stable. Noah hovered near the doorway, watching me with concern. You okay? I swallowed hard. My dad knew something. He left me a project. Birch Legacy. Does that mean anything to you? He frowned, shaking his head. No, but if he wrote "Don't trust anyone tied to the house," that sounds like a warning. I refolded the letter carefully, my chest tightening with a strange mix of grief and determination. He wanted me to find this. Which means there's more. The idea of my father building secrets beneath the cabin felt both impossible and completely logical. He was quiet but meticulous, the kind of man who'd hide meaning in blueprints and bury messages where no one would think to look. I looked around the small kitchen. Every sound, the ticking of an old clock, the groan of the floorboards, felt like a code I hadn't cracked yet. Somewhere under this roof, he'd left me something. And whatever it was, my family didn't want me to find it. My phone buzzed again. I almost ignored it until I saw the name. Ava. Her post notification lit up my screen before I could stop it. New beginnings. Excited to announce the Cole Mansion is officially on the market. My stomach dropped. I clicked the photo. There she was in front of our childhood home, smiling, the "for sale" sign behind her like a trophy. She was selling everything. The house, Dad's legacy, and suddenly, I realized something chilling. If the mansion was going up for sale, then Ava wasn't just moving on. She was trying to erase what he left behind. She listed our home like it was a handbag. Scrolling through Ava's post again, I couldn't stop staring at her perfect smile. That same practiced grin that always landed her magazine covers, interviews, and Mom's endless approval. But this time she wasn't posing for a fashion shoot. She was standing in front of our family mansion, my childhood home, with a "for sale" sign in the background and a caption that read, "New beginnings are priceless." My fingers trembled as I grabbed my car keys. 3 hours later, I was standing on that same driveway, gravel crunching under my shoes, heart pounding like a drum. Workers were already setting up glossy real estate banners. I could see Ava inside, laughing with a realtor like this was a party. When I pushed open the gate, the nearest cameraman, yes, she had a cameraman, looked up. "Excuse me, ma'am." "Don't call me ma'am," I snapped. "This is my house." Ava turned, sunglasses perched on her head, looking effortlessly composed. "Technically, it's the family house, and since I'm the executor of the estate, I'm allowed to sell it." My voice cracked. "You didn't even ask me. You didn't tell me." She sighed dramatically. "Madison, Dad wanted us to move on. You got your cabin, remember? This house is my responsibility now. You're overreacting." Neighbors had started gathering across the street. Phones came out. The cameras turned. My humiliation became public theater. "Overreacting?" I said, stepping closer. "You're selling the place where Dad spent his last years, without even reading his files, his letters. Nothing." Ava crossed her arms. "Because there's nothing to find. He left everything to me for a reason. Maybe if you weren't so busy playing detective in that broken-down shack, you'd understand how real adults handle grief." Her words hit like ice water. Then came another voice, harsh, familiar, and painfully rehearsed. "Madison!" Mom's voice. Eleanor Cole. She swept down the porch steps like she owned the wind, pearl necklace gleaming. "That's enough. You're embarrassing yourself in your father's memory." I turned toward her, stunned. "You're siding with her? After everything Dad did for both of us?" Mom's expression was pure disdain. "Ava is honoring him. You're digging up dirt for attention. Always jealous, always bitter. Why can't you just let her succeed?" The crowd's murmurs buzzed in my ears. My cheeks burned. I wanted to scream, to tell them about the blueprint, the letter, the vault, everything Dad had hidden. But something inside me stopped. This wasn't the place, not yet. I forced a bitter smile. "Fine, sell your mansion. Smile for the cameras. But don't come crying when the truth you're burying comes crawling out." Ava rolled her eyes. "You've always had a flair for drama, sis." I turned, storming down the driveway as cameras followed me. The sound of their laughter cut through my chest like glass. That night, back at the cabin, I sat on the dusty floor surrounded by Dad's letters and the faint hum of the generator. My anger had hardened into resolve. If Birch legacy was his real inheritance, I was going to find it, even if it burned every lie they'd built. My laptop dinged. From Blake Hunter, Law Office of Morton and Hunt. Subject: found an unregistered property in your father's name. I stared at the screen, pulse racing. Whatever this was, Dad had left me something bigger than a cabin. Dad never used GPS, yet these numbers were carved into the frame. I found them late that night, after hours of turning the cabin upside down. The letter had mentioned Project Birch Legacy, and if Dad left me one message, maybe there were more. I'd been rummaging through his old desk drawers, half out of desperation, when one stuck halfway open. Something metallic scraped underneath. I knelt down with a flashlight, prying at the wooden frame. Faintly etched beneath the drawer's edge was a string of numbers. 45, 1327 again, 84, 6781 Quana W coordinates. I blinked, pulling my phone out, fingers trembling as I typed them into maps. A red pin appeared in the middle of a blue expanse. A small private island in Birch Lake, about a mile from shore. The note at the bottom read, "Property of Birch Development Corp., my father's old company." Noah leaned over my shoulder, brow furrowed. "You think that's where he hid something?" "I think," I said slowly, "it's what he was trying to protect." He gave a low whistle. "That island's been fenced off for years. Nobody goes there. Then it's time someone did." The next morning, the lake looked like glass, calm, deceitful, endless. I drove to the nearest dock, clutching the coordinates in one hand and Dad's blueprint in the other. The air smelled of pine and motor oil. Boats bobbed gently, their ropes creaking like whispers. A man in his 60s stood by the rental shack, cigarette dangling from his lips. "Morning," he said, eyeing me warily. "You don't look like a weekend fisher." "I'm not. I just need to get to this point on the lake," I said, showing him the map on my phone. He squinted, then frowned. "That's Birch Island." "Yeah." He shook his head immediately. "No go. That place is off limits. Private property. Has been for decades. I'll pay double." His cigarette trembled slightly between his fingers. "You don't get it. The last guy who went out there never came back." My heart skipped. "Who?" He hesitated, eyes darting toward the lake. "Some developer. Years ago, worked with the man who owned it before Coles bought up the land." I froze. "My father's partner?" He nodded slowly. "That's the one. People said he was close to finding something before he disappeared." The wind picked up, rippling the water's surface. For a second, the sunlight flashed off the waves like Morse code. A warning or an invitation, I couldn't tell. I forced a steady breath. "Then I guess I'll be the second." The man sighed, pulling out a clipboard. "Sign this waiver first. If anything happens, I didn't see you." As he handed me the keys to a small motorboat, his tone dropped to a whisper. "Whatever your family left out there, miss. Some secrets don't like being found." The boat engine sputtered to life, and as I steered toward the island, the water seemed to darken beneath me. The coordinates might have been carved in wood, but the warning felt carved into my bones. The island smelled like metal and secrets. As the boat thudded against the dock, I jumped out, boots sinking into damp earth. Birch Island wasn't big, maybe 5 acres of tangled trees and silence, but every step I took felt like walking through someone's unfinished confession. The air carried a faint metallic tang, like old machinery or blood. I followed the coordinates deeper inland until my flashlight beam hit something impossible. A hatch, half buried under moss and debris. A rusted handle jutted out, chained but not locked. My pulse kicked. With a heave, the hatch creaked open, releasing a gust of air so cold it felt alive. A ladder descended into darkness. "Noah," I whispered into my phone, "I think I found it." Static answered. No signal. I gripped the rungs, climbing down. The air grew denser with each step until my boots hit concrete. A bunker stretched before me. A narrow corridor, flickering bulbs, and walls lined with metal cabinets. It looked abandoned, but not empty. Stacks of documents lay on a long table. Folders marked Birch Holdings, Coal Investments, and Trust Asset Registry. My father's name appeared again and again. Then I saw it. A thick vault door, brushed steel, sealed shut with a digital panel glowing faintly blue. Beside it hung a small security card, faded but intact, labeled C-Trust Holdings LLC. My hands trembled as I picked it up. C-Trust, I murmured. The same C was carved into the padlock back at the cabin. Dad had been building something big, something hidden behind the corporate veil of a shell company. I flipped open one of the binders. Page after page of offshore accounts, coded wire transfers, and transaction logs led to one figure, circled 3 times in red. $60,000. $60 million. My knees went weak. I pressed a hand to the table, trying to breathe. This was it, Birch Legacy. Not a sentimental project. Not a cabin or a diary. It was a fortune my father had buried to protect. My father, the man everyone called Simple, had built an empire in secret. And my family, the ones calling me ungrateful, I had no idea. Then the light flickered. A sound echoed from above, gravel crunching, leaves snapping. Someone was on the island. I snatched my phone, trying again for a signal. The bars blinked to life for half a second, just long enough for one notification to pop up. Ava Cole tagged you in her Instagram story. My blood ran cold. The caption read, "Guess where little sis ran off to? Your family business." She was on her way. The realization hit like ice. She'd tracked my location through the old story I'd posted at the dock. I turned toward the ladder, heart slamming in my chest. The faint roar of a boat engine cut through the wind outside. The vault glowed behind me, silent, waiting. $60 million hidden in steel, and a sister who'd kill to claim it. She arrived in heels to steal a fortune. The roar of her boat echoed across the lake before I even saw her. When Ava stepped onto the dock, she looked like she was walking a runway. Designer coat, perfect curls, phone still recording. Even the storm clouds behind her seemed to bend around her ego. "Madison," she called, waving like we were at brunch instead of standing on the edge of a secret no one was supposed to know existed. "You really couldn't help yourself, could you?" I stood frozen by the hatch. "How did you even find me?" She smirked, brushing a strand of hair behind her ear. "You tagged the dock earlier. Rookie move. You're not the only one who can use the internet, baby sister." Her voice softened then, but her eyes were sharp. "Now be reasonable. Dad told me about the family reserves. I'm not here to fight. We can split whatever's left." I laughed bitterly. "You didn't even know this place existed until 5 minutes ago." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You always think you're the smarter one, but I know Dad didn't build an island vault for sentimental reasons. So here's how this goes. You open it, we take what's ours, and we both walk away rich." I stepped between her and the hatch. "You mean you walk away rich?" The air thickened. For a second I thought she might back down. Then she lunged. We crashed into the table, papers scattering like snow. A folder tore open, pages fluttering, wire transfers, coded transactions, government seals. Ava grabbed at my wrist, nails digging deep. "You think you deserve this more than me?" she hissed. "I think Dad trusted me to find the truth," I shot back. She swung her arm wildly, hitting the keypad by accident. The bunker lights flashed red. A deafening alarm blared, echoing through the metal walls. "Great," I shouted over the noise. "You just tripped a 30-year-old security system." Ava stumbled back, eyes wide. "Turn it off." "I can't." Somewhere outside, a siren answered, not the bunkers, but real ones. Police. Someone must have picked up the distress signal. Ava's panic snapped into fury. "You called them." "No," I gasped, clutching the table for balance. "You did this." We stood there in the flashing red light, both breathing hard, both realizing we were no longer in control of whatever we'd just uncovered. When the hatch finally burst open, uniformed officers stormed in, shouting orders. Ava screamed something about family rights, inheritance, and fraud. I barely heard her. My ears were ringing, my head spinning. They separated us, handcuffing her first. One officer turned to me, voice calm but heavy. "You're Madison Cole?" I nodded numbly. He exchanged a look with his partner. "Then you need to come with us." "Why?" "This is my father's property." The officer exhaled. "Ma'am, that vault isn't about inheritance." He paused, his eyes narrowing as the words sank in. "It's evidence. Turns out, my dad was more honest dead than alive. By the time I was released from questioning, my head throbbed from the fluorescent lights and hours of replaying the same nightmare. Ava's screams, The flashing alarms, the officers calling the vault evidence. I wanted to believe it was all a misunderstanding, that Dad's secret fortune was just a misfiled inheritance. Then Blake, my father's lawyer, arrived. His suit was wrinkled, his tie askew, and his expression carried that quiet dread reserved for men who deliver bad news for a living. "Madison," he said softly, sliding into the seat across from me. "We need to talk about what you found." They said it's evidence. Evidence of what? He set a folder on the table. Of Birch legacy. My chest tightened. Dad's project? Blake nodded. Your father created a covert restitution fund, $60 million, under the name Sea Trust Holdings LLC. It wasn't for you or Ava. It was for the workers defrauded by coal developments. Your grandfather's company built those luxury properties on stolen pension funds. Your dad spent the last decade trying to make it right. I stared at him, the room spinning. He used his own inheritance to pay them back. Blake smiled faintly. Every cent. The fund was meant to go public once every claimant was compensated. You weren't his beneficiary, Madison. You were his executor. The word hit hard. Executor, not heir. He trusted you to finish what he couldn't, Blake continued. That vault was never meant to make anyone rich. It was meant to settle the debts your family buried. I leaned back, the truth cutting deeper than any betrayal. All this time I'd fought for money, and he'd been fighting for redemption. My anger melted into something quieter. Respect, grief, a sense of pride I hadn't felt in years. He didn't want us to inherit the lies, I whispered. No, Blake said gently. He wanted you to inherit his conscience. For a moment, the air between us was still. Then the door opened, and an officer handed Blake a new document. His expression changed instantly. What is it? I asked. He hesitated, jaw tightening. It's from your mother. My throat went dry. Eleanor? Blake nodded grimly. She just filed an injunction. She's contesting your role as executor, claiming you're mentally unfit to handle legal or financial matters. I froze. What? She's alleging erratic behavior, emotional instability, citing the police incident as proof. A bitter laugh escaped me. So she's using my sister's meltdown to steal Dad's legacy. Essentially, Blake said, voice low. If the court grants her motion, control of the Birch Trust passes to her. I pressed my palms to my face, trying to steady my breath. My own mother, the woman who'd watched me cry through every funeral, every insult, was about to erase me from the truth my father left behind. Blake placed a hand on the table. You'll need to fight this, Madison. And soon. I looked up, fire rekindling beneath the exhaustion. She wants a war? I said quietly. Then I'll show her what legacy really means. They put me on trial for being chosen. The courthouse smelled like old wood and cold coffee. Cameras lined the hallway, reporters whispering headlines before the verdict was even close. The 60 Million Sisters feud, one headline read. I didn't need to see it on paper. I could feel it in the air. Everyone wanted to know which daughter was lying. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with the quiet tension of gossip wrapped in law. My mother sat across the aisle, pearls perfectly arranged, her lawyer whispering strategy. Ava wore black, the kind of black that says mourning, not remorse. I sat beside Blake, clutching my statement like a lifeline. Eleanor's attorney was the first to speak. Your Honor, my client only wishes to protect her late husband's estate from mismanagement. Ms. Madison Cole has demonstrated unstable behavior, isolation, erratic decisions, and egregious trespassing. I felt my cheeks burn. He gestured toward me. She broke into restricted property, triggered law enforcement intervention, and made unsubstantiated claims about a secret fund. Hardly the actions of a stable executor. Blake rose calmly. Respectfully, Your Honor, she didn't break in. She uncovered her father's documented trust, a legal restitution fund. The so-called vault was evidence, not a crime scene. The judge nodded slightly, flipping through files. And these documents confirm her father named her executor? Yes, Blake said, voice firm. He trusted her judgment. Not because she was perfect, but because she was honest. My mother's lips tightened. She leaned toward her lawyer, whispering sharply. Then the defense called their witness. Mr. Noah Grant, the lawyer announced. Noah walked to the stand, nerves written in every step. When he raised his right hand to swear in, I saw his fingers tremble. "Mr. Grant," the lawyer began. "You were present when Ms. Cole accessed this so-called vault?" "Yes, sir." "And did she appear unstable?" Noah's gaze flicked toward me, then back to the lawyer. "No," he said steadily. "She was scared. But she was also the only one asking the right questions." A murmur rippled through the courtroom. The lawyer frowned. "And you can confirm she didn't attempt to remove funds or destroy evidence?" Noah shook his head. "She tried to protect it." I exhaled slowly. When Blake cross-examined Eleanor, her mask finally cracked. "Mrs. Cole," he said gently, "if your daughter were truly unfit, why did your late husband appoint her to oversee $60 million in trust?" "Why not you?" Her eyes flinched, just enough for the cameras to catch. "Because," she said coldly, "he didn't know her the way I do." Blake leaned forward. "Or maybe he knew you too well." The room fell silent. Even the judge paused. By the time closing arguments ended, I didn't care about the crowd, the whispers, or the cameras. I only wanted my father's truth to win. The judge adjusted her glasses. "Given the evidence," she said, "this court upholds Madison Cole as executor of the Birch Legacy Trust. However," my heart skipped. "A full financial audit is ordered to verify all assets and related property transactions." Blake nodded, relieved, until the judge continued. "The audit will include Cole Development's recent property sales, including those listed under Ava Cole." Ava's head snapped up. "What?" The judge turned another page. "According to filings, several deeds bear your name, but the signatures appear inconsistent." I stared at her, realization flooding in. Ava hadn't just betrayed me. She'd forged her way into our father's legacy, and now the court was about to expose it. Our name used to open doors. Now it headlined scandals. By the end of that week, the fall of the Coles was everywhere. News anchors called it poetic justice. Reporters parked outside the courthouse, waiting to photograph the family that once hosted charity galas, now walking in through the back entrance with lawyers instead of limousines. Ava was indicted first. The state charged her with multiple counts of forgery and fraudulent real estate transfers. Her glossy reputation, the one built on brunch photos, networking galas, and her perfect smile, cracked overnight. Even her sponsors dropped her before the first arraignment. Mom's turn came 2 days later. Eleanor Cole's assets were frozen, pending an investigation into her involvement in the cover-up. The woman who used to sign donation checks with diamond pens now couldn't even pay her legal fees without court approval. I should have felt victorious, but all I felt was tired. Dad's voice haunted me, the one from that letter I found under the sink. "If you're reading this, I couldn't finish what I started." So I did. I met with the auditors and redirected the Birch Legacy Trust exactly as he intended. The $60 million wasn't just money. It was restitution for the workers our family's company had exploited. I reviewed every name, every unpaid pension, every withheld benefit. Some of the claimants were in their 70s now, and some had passed on. Their children came in their place, tears replacing anger as I handed over the checks. One man, a retired foreman with shaking hands, looked me in the eyes and said, "Your father would have been proud, miss. You fixed what he broke." That line hit deeper than any verdict. The town's opinion shifted too. For years, we'd been the untouchable Coles, the family behind the gated driveway and manicured smiles. Now, people stop me in grocery stores just to say thank you. The mayor even presented a plaque in recognition of Madison Cole's stewardship and service. I didn't hang it. I left it in the car, because it wasn't about redemption. It was about closure. But even as I cleared the last debt, something gnawed at me. The numbers didn't add up. One file was missing, a smaller account under a code I didn't recognize. Blake helped me track it down. It led to Dad's private safe in the law firm's basement, sealed since his death. The clerk handed me the key with trembling hands, whispering, "He said this one was personal." The lock clicked open with a metallic sigh. Inside was a single manila envelope, thick with dust, the handwriting unmistakable Dad's looping script. "To my real daughter." My breath caught. For a long moment, I just stared, unable to move, the words burning through me. Real daughter? Was it a metaphor or something else? My hands trembled as I picked it up, the paper fragile, the seal still unbroken. Outside, the courthouse bell struck noon, echoing through the city like a countdown. I closed the safe door slowly, the envelope still in my hand. Whatever truth my father had buried, It was still waiting to be opened. Turns out bloodlines aren't written in DNA, but in choice. I sat at the old desk in Blake's office, the envelope trembling in my hands. The air felt too still, too reverent, like the room itself knew what was about to break. I slid a letter opener under the flap, half hoping it was some sentimental note, half afraid it wasn't. Inside was a single page, folded once, the ink slightly smudged but still sharp. My father's handwriting, careful, deliberate, sand-teddy. Madison, if you're reading this, then the truth has reached you the hard way, just as it did for me. You were never meant to find out like this, but life rarely asks our permission. You are not my biological daughter. You are my real one. My throat closed. Your father, my business partner, Daniel Hay S., saved my life 25 years ago when our construction site collapsed. He didn't make it out. His wife didn't survive the following winter. They left behind a little girl. You. The words blurred, but I forced myself to keep reading. I adopted you quietly, against my family's wishes. Your mother, Eleanor, agreed at first, then spent the next 20 years pretending you were mine by blood, while resenting the truth she could never erase. I didn't tell you because I wanted you to grow up without shame. You were meant to inherit peace, not secrets. My tears fell fast, darkening the ink. The Birch Legacy Trust was never about money. It was protection. For you. For the workers. For everyone who suffered because of the mistakes our family made. I called you my daughter because you were the only one who never asked for anything, but gave everything back. By the time I finished, my hands were shaking too hard to hold the paper. Blake stayed silent beside me, his eyes soft with understanding. So it wasn't about inheritance, I whispered. It was about being chosen. He nodded quietly. He wanted you to know that love isn't something you earn. It's something someone decides you deserve. The next week, I went back to the cabin. The air off Birch Lake was crisp, the trees reflected in the water like memories finally settling. The roof had been repaired, the windows cleared of dust, and the sign above the porch now read Coal Haven Foundation. We turned the place into a refuge, a small retreat for families rebuilding after loss. A place to rest, breathe, and start over, just like Dad would have wanted. On the first day of spring, as I was planting the new signpost, a car pulled into the driveway. Ava stepped out. No makeup, no cameras, just my sister, fragile, real, human. For a long moment, we didn't speak. Then she walked up, eyes glassy, voice barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I nodded, the weight between us finally lifting. Me too. The wind off the lake carried the scent of pine and new beginnings. I looked at the cabin, at the place where lies had turned into legacy, and smiled through tears. They gave her a mansion, but I inherited the truth. Some inherit walls. Others inherit lessons. My father's legacy wasn't money. It was proof that the overlooked daughter can rebuild everything they tried to erase. Family isn't about who gets the mansion. It's about who keeps standing when the roof falls. No fortune lasts forever, but integrity does. The real inheritance isn't measured in dollars, it's measured in courage, forgiveness, and truth. If you've ever been underestimated, subscribe, your story deserves to be told.